So I am taking a huge pay cut this year by my own choice and of my own free will. And today I'm going to explain why I'm doing that. Hey everyone, my name is Richard Liu. And if you're new here, I am a fourth year medical student at Harvard and management consultant based out of New York City. And in just a couple months, I am going to be leaving both of these roles to start my residency training in ENT and head and neck surgery at the combined Columbia-Weill Cornell residency program in New York City. I've had so many people reach out to me over these last few weeks with interests in business and in medicine, asking me how I made this decision of leaving my management consulting job and choosing to go to residency. I'm gonna start with some guiding principles that I held really close to me throughout this entire process. Second, I'm gonna share some context of how I got into this situation of picking between management consulting and medicine. Third, I'm gonna share the dimensions of work that I considered in making this decision, such as my identity, fulfillment, and quality of life. And finally, I'm going to share some of the struggles and fears that I'm still facing as I'm preparing for this next chapter of my life. Now, this is an ongoing process that took years for me to go through and understand even for myself. So I will do my best to distill it down succinctly, and hopefully it can be useful for you on your journey as well. Before I dive in, I do want to take 10 seconds to acknowledge the privilege that I have in making this decision and choosing between two very highly sought after careers in management consulting and in medicine. My purpose in making this video is not to flex, but to provide a decision-making framework that helped me as I was navigating through this really complex decision where there were truly no wrong answers, and a decision that I know many of you are facing now or know that you will face in the near future. So here's a thesis that guided my decision. Going to residency will enable me to choose a career that is aligned with my identity, that will fulfill me through mastery of a craft as a surgeon, through my relationships with patients, and through the adventure of building and growing my own practice, and that will enable a quality of life in the long term that I am willing to put in the work for in the near term through residency. So here are some guiding principles that I held really close to me as I was going through this process over the last couple of years. Number one is to reflect on your needs and desires and to understand the time horizon for those things. You're going to need to take a lot of time to reflect on the things that you want in life and those things that you just can't live without. And moreover, there are a lot of things that are really important in life beyond your career. And approach that you take where you are loving and compassionate to yourself means recognizing and celebrating those things, whether it's family, it's your support system, it's the financial freedom that you might want to have in the future. Having a sustainable and meaningful life means that you are relentless in protecting those things when you need to. For me, the crux of this decision between staying in my management consulting job and going to residency was this idea of delayed gratification. Residency is a lot more grueling than the job that I have now. Number two is to hypothesize what your North Star is and spend your time every day skating closer and closer towards it. Now, one of my closest friends shared this idea with me just a few months ago, and it's a really great one because what it means is that so long as you have this North Star guiding you, it serves as your compass, and as long as you are skating towards it, you are on the right path. There will be times when things can change and your North Star can shift, and that is okay. Let those things happen, but be reflective about why your North Star changes in any given moment. For me today, my hypothesis for my North Star is that I want to become an ENT surgeon and possibly a facial plastic surgeon, working both in functional surgeries like reconstruction after trauma or cancer and congenital conditions, or in facial nerve reanimation. Also, some of the more aesthetic cosmetic procedures like facial rejuvenation. And the final guiding principle is to love yourself and always remember that you are in control of putting on the shoe that fits you best. Be patient and compassionate with yourself and know that it's okay to not have all the answers right away. Look, at the end of the day, it is about the journey and not the destination. And at every step of the way, you are in control and can walk away from things that are toxic or bad for you in order to choose what is best for you, even if walking away from those things seems really hard to do. So I want to explain really briefly how I got into this situation of being able to choose between management consulting and medicine. The journey kind of starts in 2015 when I was a junior in college and I first did my summer internship at this management consulting firm where I work now. After that internship, I got an offer to return after I graduated college, but ended up deferring it for 5 years. The first 2 years after graduating, I went to Oxford to do a Rhodes Scholarship where I got my MBA and a global health degree. And then afterwards, I started medical school at Harvard. Now, I've always been someone who's really interested in thinking about the big picture and thinking on a systems level, working with people and organizations to watch them grow and achieve their goals. During medical school, I went through an existential crisis that I think a lot of us go through, of wondering what it is that we really want to do with our lives. Now, this management consulting firm wanted me to come back to work for them after medical school, but that would have meant that I had to forego going to residency at all. And so I asked them if I could come a year earlier, and I asked my med school if I could take a leave of absence. So I came back in 2021 as a post-MBA associate, and after I got promoted in 2022, I discovered that we have this flexible work policy where we can take up to 20% of the year off, which ends up being about 15 weeks, including PTO, and we get paid 80% of our salary throughout the entire year. And I used that time to finish medical school, to finish all of my rotations, and to apply to residency. And I'm really grateful for this period of time because it allowed me to switch back and forth between management consulting and being in the operating room. And it really allowed me to assess how these different environments shaped all the different dimensions of work that I'm going to be talking about in just a second. Going on to part 3, what are the dimensions of work? Why do people work? And what role does work play in your life? I think that there are 3 primary dimensions of work that people consider. Number 1 is how work shapes your identity. Number 2 is how work provides meaning and fulfillment in your life. And number 3 is how work enables your quality of life. I think that people work because it can shape an integral part of their identity. It can be internal or external. Internally, it can be known as your self-concept. Externally, it can be known as your status or your fame or renown to others. When I was thinking about management consulting and being a physician or a surgeon, I was thinking about how each of these roles might affect my identity, both in the way that other people might see me, but more importantly, in the way that I see myself and the pride that I'm able to take in my career. From an external perspective, I really don't think that there's that much of a difference in terms of being a management consultant and being a physician. Both are highly respected careers, and I think being a physician might have the slight edge in being perceived as a more noble career path, but through watching the senior partners at my management consulting firm, it's easy to see that they are highly respected and trusted by their clients and have built really lasting and deep relationships in the industries where they are experts. I think more importantly, the internal identity was something that I struggled with quite a bit. And it took me a long time to realize that being a physician, being someone who is capable of taking care of another human being in need is something that I take a lot of pride in. Something felt very incomplete about this idea of going to medical school and not going to residency and therefore not being able to prescribe medication or to derive a plan when someone is coming to me in need of medical advice. A big part of what I wrestled with in this decision was really understanding for myself how much of this sense of identity and self was internal versus external. Was this just something that I wanted to project to the outside world, or was this something that really truly mattered to me? And I got some really good advice from one of my mentors at this management consulting firm who is a physician and did go to residency. And he said that you have to decide for yourself whether or not your job is just a job or if your job feels more like a calling. And if it feels more like a calling, and that gives you a sense of just how much you want to define your self-concept and your pride around that thing that you might wake up and do every single day. So in the end, I realized that this identity as a physician, as someone who can take care of other people, was not just important to me, but something that I didn't want to give up. So this brings me to my second dimension of work, which is fulfillment. And people understand this as their purpose, their meaning, their impact that they get through their work. Now, I break down fulfillment into 2 components. The first being the fulfillment that you get from the day-to-day bread and butter that a job comes with. And the second being the bigger picture story or narrative that you are able to craft for yourself as someone working in this job. Now, the day-to-day as a management consultant and as a surgeon are totally different. As a management consultant, your day-to-day changes as you progress through your consulting firm. As an analyst and an associate, you're spending most of your time learning to refine this toolkit, how to create good PowerPoints, how to communicate effectively, how to build models, how to begin working with clients. When you are an engagement manager or project lead, where I'm at currently, your job is broken down into managing multiple different work streams and making sure that the team is able to stay on track and that you're providing the coaching and the teaching and the mentoring to everyone else on the team that may need it. Now, as you continue to progress to become an associate partner and partner, your job becomes a lot more relationship-based, where you are using the client relationships that you have and the expertise that you have in the industry to find ways for your clients to continue staying ahead of the curve and anticipating their needs far before they might even recognize them. Now, as a healthcare professional and as a surgeon, your day-to-day is completely different. Your days are much more structured, with certain days spent in the operating room and certain days spent seeing patients and working within a team to manage the practice or the hospital setting in which you work. Whereas on the consulting side, later in your career, a lot of your time is spent doing conceptual problem solving and managing relationships. On the healthcare side and on the surgical side, a lot of your time is spent perfecting a craft and building long relationships with your patients whom you treat and whose family members and friends you might treat one day as well. Now, the important thing to remember here is that the day-to-day and the bread and butter is going to be repetitive no matter what job you do. And that's the nature of finding what it is that you like to do every single day. And for me, I found that once I got to a point in my management consulting career where I became a project leader, a lot of the skills, the new skills that I was learning were very specific to advancing at this firm, as opposed to skills that were translatable in many different contexts. And as I started shifting more and more into that mindset, I found myself more sensitive to the hamster wheel nature of corporate work. And I found my most fulfilling moments in the one-on-one interactions that I had with clients or with my team members as I was coaching and mentoring them. Now, on the surgery side, a lot of people feel that doing the same surgeries and the same operations every single day is also rote and mundane. But what really attracted me to that was the fact that I was perfecting a craft and I was really getting better at surgical finesse every single day. And I could spend hours trying to perfect a technique, watching videos, trying to learn how to throw a stitch perfectly or how to suture something so it looked like there was no surgeon there at all. And furthermore, there was something so special and unique about working with patients who you saw before their surgery, being in the operating room with them, and then seeing them afterwards. And that aspect is something that I realized I craved and desired as part of my everyday work. Now, from the big picture perspective, I think that management consulting and being a surgeon are also quite different. As a management consultant, your primary objective is to help businesses and organizations achieve their goals, and you form strong relationships to enable being able to do that. As a surgeon, your primary objective is to help people individually through your surgical skills, through your medical knowledge, and capabilities in understanding business and organizations can help you navigate that process through your own practice or through a big hospital system. Ultimately, the work as a physician and surgeon resonated a lot more with me personally, and I realized that that was aligned with what I wanted to do best. Finally, there is quality of life, and I break this down into two components as well. The first being the flexibility and autonomy that you have with your job, and the second being the compensation or the amount that you earn. Now, as I was thinking about both of these things, one of the biggest challenges I had was thinking about the right time horizon, because both of these career paths are very different over the next 5 years in a way that is distinct from how they are different in the next 25 or 30 years. Now, from the flexibility and autonomy perspective, in the near term, I am going to be giving up a lot of flexibility and autonomy in my life in order to go to residency. Now, it might seem crazy to say this, but I had great autonomy and flexibility in my work as a management consultant. As an engagement manager, I was able to institute a lot of working norms, like not working past 4 p.m. on Fridays and not working on the weekends, or working remotely if the client didn't require us to be in person. That last one especially allowed me to travel for almost a third of the year when I was working at my management consulting firm, giving me the ability to take vacations and to travel to see friends in ways that I would never be able to do as a resident. I know that I'm going to be giving up a lot of that flexibility and autonomy going into residency, where I'll be working weekends and overnight shifts and sometimes averaging 80 hours a week. And this difference in flexibility and autonomy was one of the big reasons that made it really challenging for me to pick a path that I felt was more aligned with my identity and my long-term fulfillment. However, I realized that I was really only thinking about the next 5 years and less so about the next 30. Now, if I think about the next 30 years, I actually would have more flexibility and autonomy as a surgeon running my own practice than I would as a senior partner at a management consulting firm, where I would still be traveling all the time to go and meet with clients whenever they need. Now, of course, on the management consulting side, there are a lot of different exit opportunities, and I could have chosen to leave my job to start my own company and have that same kind of autonomy and control over my life. However, because being a surgeon was so aligned with me in terms of my identity and in terms of my own sense of purpose and fulfillment, I felt like this was the right path to go. And finally, from the quality of life perspective, there is compensation, which is the title of this video. If I had stayed at my management consulting job, all in compensation for this year, if I performed the same as I did last year, would have been almost $350,000. Damn. Now, the salary you make as a management consultant goes up over time and reaches the single-digit millions once you become a partner and senior partner. In contrast, as a first-year resident, I'm going to be making $81,000 to start, and that salary will slowly progress upwards to about $100,000 during my 5th and final year of residency. This was probably one of the biggest hurdles in terms of me leaving my current job and entering my new one as a surgical resident. And I have to tell you, it was not an easy decision. Luckily, I had a number of mentors in facial plastic surgery surgery where I was able to have a very frank discussion where I shared with them that it was unusual for me to leave this kind of money given that I didn't grow up around this kind of money. However, much like with flexibility and autonomy, I realized that I was looking at this with too short of a time horizon. Now, the average salary of an otolaryngologist is about $500,000 in the United States, and it is possible that if I do one day have my own practice, that I could be earning as much as a management consultant as well. So to summarize, all of these things came together around the way that I want to shape my identity, the place where I find purpose and meaning in my work, and then the kind of quality of life that I wanted to have. And on that last one, it really was expanding the time horizon beyond these next 5 years and really thinking about what I want to design for my life in the next 25, 30 years, what I really want as that North Star that helped me clarify the decision that I made to go to residency and train to become a surgeon. Now, again, with that third principle, I think this was the most important part of deciding all of this, which was loving myself, being patient, being compassionate, and understanding that my preferences can change even from this point on. A big part of what I will be doing over these next several years is listening to myself and continuing to test the hypotheses that I have for my North Star and the direction that I'm going. Now, the last thing that I want to share are some of the struggles and the fears that are top of mind for me as I'm preparing for this next chapter. The two most important things are my quality of life and my well-being. One of the things that I knew very early on in terms of making this decision is knowing that I am going to be taking a hit in terms of the flexibility, the autonomy, the amount of sleep that I'm going to be getting. And that is something that still brings me a lot of anxiety, thinking about how I'm going to adjust to that kind of life. And brings me back to something I said earlier, where life really is about the journey. Life is about adapting and kind of figuring things out every step of the way. I think I'm grateful that right now I know that that is something that I care a lot about and something that I will be prioritizing during residency. And I will be figuring out different ways to make sure that I'm able to get the amount of sleep that I need and to make sure that I have time set aside for friends and family and vacations planned so that I can make sure that I live a full life outside of work so that I can bring myself to work in the way that I want. Okay, guys, that is everything for now. Thank you for watching. I know this was a long one, but I hope it was helpful in giving some insight into how I made this decision between staying in my management consulting job and going to residency, and shed some light onto how I plan to keep both the business world and the clinical world in my future as I skate towards this North Star, wearing the shoe that fits me best. If you have any questions about any of this, drop your questions in the comment section below. I love reading your comments and I'll respond to as many as I can. Also, be sure to like and subscribe so that you don't miss out. I am so excited to take you all on this journey, and I will see you next time.